here's my case for why I'm a crazy person and actually have been living on Bitcoin. 95% of my income has been Bitcoin since 2020. And I live on it pretty much exclusively. My case is this. Number one, tax implications up and down. Oh, geez, what if there's a capital gain event triggered and da da da. Okay, well, if you incur a taxable event and there's a capital gain to be paid, that means your money, your day-to-day money has increased in purchasing power, and you then have to give back a portion of that increase to the government. You're still up. And what that means in practice is, when's the last time that happened to your dollars?
It's a good way to
Obviously,
look at
like, they don't charge.
You're looking at what you get, but not what you lost. That's,
yeah, exactly. And so it's like saying, I don't want to win the lottery because there'll be taxes on it. It's like you're still doing better than you were. And on the flip side of that, if there's a loss at the time when you spend your Bitcoin, you can claim a loss, a capital loss on that as well, which also not possible on the dollar, which does that perpetually forever.
Good points.
So
Good
there's
points.
those two things, and then on top of that, like, it's not going to be as easy. It's ideological if you're going to make that leap, but it's not as difficult as one would think. And in terms of volatility, I send out invoices. I get paid at the beginning of the month. And the way that I avoid volatility in the short term is, as soon as the invoices come in, I know exactly what my expenses are for the month. I just pay those right away. And then the rest is long-term savings. And it does an extra thing for me down the line is this Bitcoin that I have either, in my personal savings or as the company treasury, if there's an expense that we're deciding on, it becomes, do I actually want and really need this thing? Or would it be better to save? And sometimes the answer is, yes, it's important. We should get this. Other times it makes me more conscientious about my expenses after the fact.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's kind of the thing with fiat is that maybe some of the government officials wanted to continue to lose value, so they incentivize us to spend as if humans need as if humans need incentive to spend. But the flip side of that is, if your money can buy you more in the future, could I just wait a little bit longer to where it's cheaper for me? And so that's kind of the unlock. And I'm just going to tell the audience real quick, that's great for Ben. He gets paid in Bitcoin. You don't. But you could do the same thing. You just flip it. So he gets paid in Bitcoin. He converts what he needs to pay his bills into dollars, saves in Bitcoin. You get paid in dollars. You pay what you need in dollars and convert the rest to Bitcoin. So you can do the same thing. You just invert that.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the South Korea, kick your door down. What are you going to do? And let's not even go to South Korea, but I've been seeing more and more headlines of people being targeted, known crypto people being targeted, home invasions, wrench attacks, as we will, things like that. So how do you, and you work with, you have a service where you help people sort of kind of start using this self-custody. So where does somebody start? And then, like, how do you think through, like, walking them into the process, and how should they evolve into that?
Yeah. So, the first initial steps, you're going to keep it as basic as possible. One, where am I going to obtain my Bitcoin? And depending on the locale, it's going to be different for everyone, but there's plenty of options depending on your country and city and so on and so forth. Then it's the basics, like just dipping your toe in. How do I get something as simple as a wallet on my phone or computer? And just familiarizing yourself with, I can download an app. What are good apps to download? And if I break my phone or delete the app or something, how do I actually practically recover access to my funds? So just getting your mind around that. Those are kind of your initial two steps.
Understanding what a key is, and then understanding how to back up the key.
Exactly. And so there's a common misconception, and it makes sense with the name that we call a Bitcoin wallet. People think, oh, my Bitcoin's in the wallet. Mm-hmm. That's not exactly how it works. Obviously, Bitcoin is just a global ledger of who owns what. Mm-hmm. So what the hell's in the wallet? The wallet is a key to your money. And so that key, you can unlock your money and send it wherever you like. And much like a key, you can make copies of that key. So when you set up a wallet, it'll say, write down these 12 words and keep them safe. That's literally a spare key. And so you can always, if you delete the app or break the phone, you can go back and get those 12 words and access the money again. But it's important, since your key is information, that nobody gets a copy of that information, because then they can unlock what it unlocks, which is your money. So, in terms of keys, we're talking about wallets on your phone or computer. That would be known as a hot wallet. So the keys are on something, on a device that is directly accessing the internet, which is okay for, day-to-day spending, small amounts, stuff like that. Think cash in your pocket. That's fine. But
you wouldn't walk around with your life
you're not
savings
gonna
in your
be-
pocket.
Exactly. You're not gonna be stacking tens of thousands of dollars in cash in your pockets, and
Unless you're Floyd Mayweather. You seen that guy walking around the $10,000
you
stack
got a
sticking out of his
security team
pockets?
now. Yeah. So then what's the next step from there? And that would be something called cold storage. And that's simply means that the keys to your money are on a device that never directly connects to the internet. Something like a cold card or a Trezor or a Jade. It's basically just little devices. I mean, I'll hold up one as an example, but little devices that, and they have many different form factors, where it literally just holds the keys to your money and keeps them safe. And when you need to access them, you plug it into a computer or scan QR codes to communicate, whatever it may be, or tap NFC. It just allows you to approve transactions. So those are kind of your main three things. Where am I getting Bitcoin? Learn some basics about hot wallets on your phone, and then decide on a piece of hardware to keep yourself secure. There's more beyond that for the, somebody kicking in your door, but those are your starting points.
Those are good. The other thing I'd say is that too much today I see that people lack any nuance in their thinking. So this doesn't have to be one or the other, black or white. Like, you can have some of it on an exchange, and then you could try to pull a little bit off and do that. And like you already said, like maybe some little bits amounts in your hot wallet and some is in cold wallet. And so you can start to spread this around a little bit. It's like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Start with just getting some Bitcoin. Like, how about just start with that? And then, like you said, how about a little bit into like hot storage? Okay. Now, how about a little bit into cold storage? And you're sort of like, as you said, dipping your toe in the water, and you're sort of learning. And there's trade-offs to all of these. Right. So there's trade-offs. So it's not one is better than the other. They're better in different circumstances. And so understanding that and realizing that whatever your stack looks like, it could be split up, like I have it in multisig. I have it in a couple different single sigs. I have some on a hot wallet. I got some on Venmo. I got some on River, right? Like, and it's like kind of like spread around, right? And it's all different use cases there.
Yeah, of course. And again, as you said, like, you don't have to go all or nothing right out the gate. Everybody learns step by step. And so when I see people that are criticizing other people for not being fully self-sovereign the second they get into Bitcoin, it's like, guys, this is not how people learn. And we need to realize that if somebody's first foray into Bitcoin, you're like, all right, step one, you're going to set up a Bitcoin node. And then you're going to, it's like, they're already turned around and out the door.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to make fun of somebody who's just starting their learning journey. It's like making fun of a child learning the alphabet because they haven't read Human Action yet.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I think it's important to like not go past your technical limitations. And I made the mistake back, 2017, 2018, Bitcoin was cheap, and I was kind of throwing around like chiclets, and I was paying friends in Bitcoin. And I'd say, hey, download this app, let me send it to you. But I never really gave them the education past that point. And years later, I check in, it's like, man, that's probably worth $100,000 now. Do you still have that? And they're like, I don't even know where that phone is anymore, or whatever, right? And so it's like, now today, it's like, well, how much time do I have to spend with you? How technical do I think you are? And I might just tell you just to like open up an account on River and just buy it real quick, or something. And then like we can get to the next point later. So I think it's important to understand that. But let's just talk about the self-custody, because that's important and it's scary. So most of us are used to keeping money in banks. We're used to having somebody else protect that money for us. Of course, Bitcoin gives us the ability to do that, and I think we should. But what would be, because it is scary, and I'm sure that's why people hire you, because they're scared, what would you say the biggest things that they should be scared of and they should just pay attention to?
Right. So when it comes to an individual kind of messing up and losing Bitcoin, what are the common things that happen? So one of them would be just not being aware of what you've done, and unlocking yourself out of your Bitcoin, screwing up, losing things, overcomplicating things in some instances. And so what I typically say to people is, as we alluded to, dabble first, become familiar, just practice, try a couple things, send some transactions, and revisit your setup either maybe every 6 months, but once a year is probably good. And just do a quick little audit of, okay, I've got this device, I've got my backup, and this is where they are. And this person, family member, trusted person, is aware of where I've kept this stuff too. So if something happens to me, my family knows where to find it and what to do. I do this little audit with my wife once a year. We go through and say, okay, very important. We want to make sure if anything happens to me or both of us, that the kids get what they need and all of that. So we just go through and we say, okay, this is here, this is here, this is how to access it. And we left a note with family and how to get a hold of everything.
That's a great tip, by the way, and that's not what I would have expected to hear from you. And I just want to pause there because that is super important. And myself, I've been guilty of just leaving things too long. And I like the fact of refreshing yourself, to sharing it with your friends, family, loved ones. I would add a third piece on there, and this is just something I've been thinking about lately. Before we start recording, I told you I've gotten to the point, my kids have gotten a little bit older, where I'm now taking my wife, and we were just coming back from a trip, and I was like, what if both of us died? And like, sure, like my daughter, okay, calls our attorney, and like, okay, they'll figure out how to get the life insurance, and okay, they can figure out how to get some of the Bitcoin, but what is she gonna do with it? Like, what is she going to do with the money? And even like what happens what's the first step? What's the first 30 days? What's like, so sort of like this set of instructions. And then even, okay, so now you've got all this money, like now what do you do with it? So I've started to even think longer term about creating those instructions for them. So piece to add, but anyway, go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and again, what I'm talking about here is just some of the basics. Like if you just have like a device and a backup, then you would kind of do that self audit once in a while. We've gone kind of beyond that. You mentioned multisig, and we do indeed use multisig. And if anybody is listening that's unfamiliar with that, think of a regular Bitcoin wallet as you have a digital vault and you have one key that opens it. Maybe you have backup keys just in case. Multisig would be like a digital vault that has multiple keyholes with different keys for each, and you need a certain number of those keys simultaneously to unlock your money. So maybe you have 3 keys and you need at least 2 of those in order to access the funds. That means you can lose some stuff and still have access. And so
it's like a war movie when they want to like launch the nukes. They need 2 keys and they have to like turn at the same time or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so it gives you a couple things. So we back to the South Korea tax office kicking indoors, or whoever kicking indoors. When you have a multi-sig with multiple keys and you disperse those to different locations, somebody getting access to one key does not give them access to all of your Bitcoin. In fact, there's ways you can set it up where getting access to one key, they don't even know that it's part of a multi-sig. You could have like a decoy amount on that. So there's lots of different cool things you could do. But nonetheless, we've got set up a multi-sig with kind of an automated inheritance part to it that triggers something. And I basically set it a year in advance, right? And I get a warning about 2 months beforehand. And this is all like I have unilateral control. There's just an external company that has one key. And so they can't run off with funds or anything like that. They can only help sign a transaction. But it's all automated. So if something happens to me and I'm not able to bump that 1 year threshold forward each year, then my loved ones will get an email that says your inheritance is ready to claim. Download this application. And then I provided them with some very basic information. It's like 3 English words and a password. And just by having that information, they will be able to gain access to the inheritance that was secured by that multi-sig
And the
vault.
company will send them that email with those 3 words, you're saying?
Yeah. And you can have multiple. No, the company doesn't have the 3
okay.
words. Yeah. So this is.
So you have to leave some other
basically-
instructions for them to get that from you. And then when they get the email from the company, then they'll be able to complete that.
Exactly. I give them the 3 words and the password. And I can have multiple copies of this and, keep this safe, keep a secondary copy here, whatever, but multiple copies of it. Anybody getting a hold of that information right now, they can do nothing with
What
it.
company is that with that you do that with?
So this is Nunchuck. These are actually the guys that, this is the same wallet we used during the Canadian trucker protest.
Okay.
And they're the same guys that told the Canadian government to go shove it when they requested user information.
Yeah. Okay. So they offer that.
they're really solid.
Okay, so it's like a multi-sig. They keep a key. Every year they send you an email. If you don't reply, then they'll send an email to your loved ones. They have the second key, and then they can get access to the funds.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's from the person receiving the inheritance standpoint. It's very simple. They get an email. It says that they're ready to receive their inheritance. They type in 3 words, a password. They now have access.
Hey, if you like this short conversation I just had, you're going to love the full-length conversation. Don't miss it. You can go ahead and click right over here, and I'll see you over there.